Just like Willy Wonka was born to be a candy man, and you look like you were born to be a Wonkera.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, released in 1971, became an instant classic, wrapping childhood in a swirl of chocolate rivers, fizzy lifting drinks, and the weird magic of Gene Wilder's eyes that somehow promised both wonder and something unsettling beneath the surface. People fell in love with its songs and its fantasy, replaying it in living rooms across America and beyond for over 50 years. But here's the thing. Behind that technicolor charm, hidden in a single scene, is a blooper so big it's almost like a whisper from Wonka himself, waiting to be seen. A mistake that changes how you look at the story and the factory's dark undercurrent forever. So, what is this blooper? And why has it gone unnoticed for so long? The classic bloopers everyone knows. In the summer of 1971, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory spilled onto American screens like a rainbow crashing into a chocolate river. Parents brought kids to the cinema, expecting another feel-good children's film, and instead found themselves humming Oompa Loompa songs for weeks, replaying scenes of golden tickets and fizzy-lifting drinks in the back of their minds. It was a strange kind of magic, the kind that felt warm and unsettling at the same time, with Gene Wilder's soft voice and those piercing blue eyes hinting that something deeper was hidden behind Wonka's smiles. Everyone trusted the film to deliver a sweet, whimsical ride, and it did. It felt safe, comforting, like a story that would never crack. But if you pause and look closely, you'll see the cracks have been there all along. Before we reveal the blooper nobody noticed, let's look at the most famous mistakes that have puzzled fans for years. In the fizzy-lifting drink scene, when Charlie and Grandpa Joe float toward the ceiling, you can catch the wires holding them up, faint but there if you slow the footage. The moment they laugh and pretend to swim in midair, the wires catch the light, thin strands like a spider's thread dangling in front of the camera, reminding us that this world of floating dreams was built in a studio where magic relied on pulleys and ropes. And speaking of Grandpa Joe, here's the paradox that never stops haunting viewers. He spent 20 years in that cramped bed with Grandma Josephine, Grandma Georgina, and Grandpa George, claiming he was too frail to work, too weak to walk, too sick to help the family. But the moment Charlie waves that golden ticket, Grandpa Joe jumps up, does a spin, and practically dances around the room like a man half his age. Fans still argue about this online, wondering if Grandpa Joe was the ultimate freeloader, waiting for a chance to grab a chocolate tour and abandon his so-called bedridden years the instant opportunity appeared. You can see it in Charlie's small home, the way the camera pans across the four grandparents huddled under one blanket, the steam rising from the soup pot, and Charlie's thin face looking tired from working to support them. Then Grandpa Joe suddenly hops up, the film not even trying to hide how quickly he goes from invalid to adventure-ready. It feels like a plot hole so obvious that you almost wonder if Wonka's magic was already at play. Then there's Violet Beauregarde. She's the gum-chewing champion, turning into a giant blueberry when she refuses to stop chewing that forbidden gum. But in one moment, you see a red gummy bear clutched in her hand, and in the next, it's gone. Then it's back again. These continuity slips reveal themselves like little glitches, almost as if the factory is alive, playing tricks on us the same way it plays tricks on the kids who break the rules inside its walls. And if you slow down the scene in the edible garden, you'll notice the mushroom umbrella. Gene Wilder plucks it, letting chocolate syrup drip onto a flower cup before taking a sip. If you look closely, the umbrella has holes in it, small and jagged, from previous takes where the syrup had already eaten through the material. It's there for everyone to see, hiding in plain sight, like a silent reminder of how many retakes it took to get that perfect sip that made audiences gasp with delight. But these mistakes are child's play compared to the Slugworth mystery. Slugworth, the sinister rival, shows up immediately after each golden ticket is found. He leans into the kids' ears, whispering offers of money for a stolen everlasting gobstopper, hinting at betrayal. But how does he get there so fast? The film never explains it. Augustus finds the ticket, and suddenly, Slugworth is there. Veruca Salt's father tears open thousands of chocolate bars, and the moment the ticket surfaces, there's Slugworth, waiting, watching, ready to pounce. It almost feels like a glitch in the timeline, as if Slugworth's appearances hint at something deeper, a planned outcome that even the audience isn't meant to fully grasp. The actor who played Slugworth later revealed that the character was a test by Wonka, but the film never clarifies how Slugworth could know the location of every ticket before the world did, how he could materialize in every city, every country, within hours of each discovery. It's a loose thread that keeps pulling at the fabric of the story. And let's talk about the chocolate river, the liquid heart of Wonka's factory. It wasn't made of chocolate at all, but was a mix of water and powdered cream with food coloring. According to the Screen Rant anniversary interview, the mixture spoiled quickly under the hot studio lights, turning into a foul-smelling sludge that actors had to wade through. Gene Wilder and the crew described the scent as sour and heavy, a far cry from the delicious river the film made it out to be. The water clung to the costumes, and the children had to act joyful while trying not to gag on the smell. Think about that next time you watch Augustus Gloop plunge face first into that river, splashing around with chocolate dripping from his cheeks. The scene looks playful, but the reality was uncomfortable, sticky, and nauseating. A moment of cinematic beauty layered over a very real mess, hidden just beneath the surface. All these bloopers have lived in the background of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for over 50 years, waiting for viewers to notice them during rewatches in the middle of the night, when the world is quiet and the colors on the screen glow a little brighter. They're mistakes that somehow add to the film's charm, reminding us that even in a world of candy and wonder, flaws slip through, and the magic sometimes needs wires to hold it up. Have you noticed any of these bloopers before? And here's the thing. What if these mistakes aren't just accidental? What if the biggest blooper is hiding in plain sight, right in front of us, overlooked for decades, and it changes everything we know about Willy Wonka's factory and the story we thought we understood? The blooper hidden in plain sight. That day on set in 1971, the chocolate river didn't smell like chocolate. It smelled sour, thick with powdered cream that had turned under the hot studio lights. But none of that mattered to the crew or the kids who lined up along the rail, their faces bright under the warm glow of studio lamps. They were waiting for the moment Augustus Gloop would fall into the chocolate river, a moment that would become one of the most iconic in cinema, replayed on VHS tapes in the 1980s, on DVDs in the 2000s, and in memes across your phone screens late at night. We all remember how it looked. Augustus, greedy and oblivious, leaning over the river, taking handfuls of chocolate, ignoring his mother's calls, and then slipping, flailing as he falls into the river, causing waves that swallow him whole. It felt like the perfect cautionary tale, a reminder that greed has consequences, and in Wonka's world, the consequences arrive fast. But here's what no one noticed. If you slow the footage, freeze it at just the right moment, you will see that Augustus Gloop doesn't slip. He pushes himself in. His foot slides forward, his hands press against the railing, and instead of slipping backward like someone losing their balance, his body lunges forward, like a diver leaning into a pool. His arms brace for the fall, His head tucks forward, and he propels himself into the chocolate river. This isn't an accident, it's a deliberate jump. And the illusion of randomness breaks right there. The moment you notice it, you can't unsee it. It is as if the scene changes in front of you, like a door quietly closing on the idea that Augustus fell by chance. In that second, the chocolate factory's chaotic magic feels less like chaos and more like a performance, with Augustus as a willing participant in his own downfall. According to IMDb's Goofs page, this was never corrected in post-production. It's there in every version, hidden in plain sight. You can pull up the timestamp, slow it down, and see the truth for yourself. It's like the factory itself wanted you to think it was an accident, that Wonka's world punished Augustus for his greed with perfect, whimsical karma. But maybe it was never about karma. Maybe it was about control. This is where the conversation shifts from a funny blooper to something deeper. We know the chocolate river was a chemical sludge, not chocolate, forcing the child actor to wade through a foul-smelling pool that clung to his costume and skin. We know the Oompa Loompas arrived on cue, singing their song, moving in a rhythm that felt like fate closing in. But if Augustus pushed himself, it suggests the chaos was staged, the punishment pre-arranged, the moral lesson scripted not just by the writers, but by Wonka himself, testing the children's flaws in a controlled environment where every slip was a guided push. It makes you wonder about the rest of the factory. Violet Beauregard's transformation into a blueberry, Veruca Salt's descent into the garbage chute, and Mike Teavy's shrinkage. Were these truly random accidents, or were they inevitable, carefully designed outcomes orchestrated to test each child exactly where they would fail? Was Wonka's chaos actually order in disguise? Think about Slugworth, appearing instantly after every golden ticket is found, whispering offers of betrayal, testing loyalty. Think about Grandpa Joe, who had been bedridden for 20 years, jumping up at the second an opportunity arrives. Think about the fizzy lifting drinks, conveniently left out for Charlie and Grandpa Joe to find, pushing them toward failure, only for them to survive and be tested again. Augustus's push into the river feels like the key that unlocks this pattern. It suggests that nothing in the factory is truly accidental. The factory isn't a place where bad kids get what they deserve by chance. It's a place where bad kids are led to their downfall, where every step, every choice, is manipulated by Wonka's hidden hand. In some YouTube videos, you can watch how this scene plays out frame by frame, with commentary pointing out how Augustus's footwork and body language contradict the narrative of an accidental slip. It's there, clear as day, if you're willing to see it. So here's a challenge for you. Re-watch the scene. Watch Augustus's feet, his hands, and the way he looks at the river before he goes in. Notice how the crowd barely reacts, how Wonka's face remains calm, how the Oompa Loompas begin their song before the bubbles even stop. Watch it again, and see how it changes the entire scene for you. Once you see that push, the factory doesn't look the same anymore. It feels like a place of hidden scripts, of orchestrated chaos, of manipulation disguised as whimsy. It makes you wonder what else we've missed, what other bloopers hide inside the chocolate factory, not as mistakes, but as quiet confessions of the film's deeper truths. Do you think it changes the story? Does it change your view of Wonka? And if the biggest accident in the film is actually planned, what does that say about the other mistakes we've seen? Are they mistakes at all? Or are they hints, left behind like breadcrumbs for those of us who can't help but pause, rewind, and look closer? The reality of making the magic. The set of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory looked like magic under the bright studio lights. But the magic came at a cost. The chocolate river, The one that kids dreamed of swimming in was not chocolate at all. It was a mix of water, powdered cream, and food coloring that turned sour under the heat of the lamps. It smelled like spoiled milk and clung to clothes and skin, leaving a film that made the actors gag between takes. Yet, this was the world they were building. A world of edible teacups and sugar flowers, where a child could eat a daffodil cup while singing about a world of pure imagination. But the reality was different. That edible teacup Gene Wilder bit into during the song was made of wax. Inside, it was not sweet nectar or candy juice, but regular tap water poured moments before filming to keep the illusion alive. Gene Wilder later admitted in an interview that he tried to chew the wax as if it were candy, but could only swallow the water before spitting the wax out off camera. The film's budget was tight, far tighter than the fantasy it tried to project. In the Collider interview for the 50th anniversary, the cast remembered how quickly the production moved, how sets were reused, and how costumes were patched instead of replaced. The golden tickets were thin foil over printed cardboard, and the everlasting gobstopper was a hastily painted resin ball that chipped if dropped. They were working with what they had, building dreams out of what they could afford. This tight budget led to mistakes that became part of the film's DNA. Continuity errors slipped through. Violet's hair bow would disappear and reappear in the same scene. The size of the candy mushrooms changed between shots. Grandpa Joe's slippers would swap from clean to dirty within seconds as scenes cut together. But they had to keep filming because the budget and the schedule did not allow for reshoots. These mistakes are visible if you look closely, like small ghosts haunting the frames, reminders of the human effort that went into creating a world that felt larger than life. The chocolate river, for example, spoiled so quickly that it became a hazard for the actors. Crew members reported the smell of rotting cream filling the studio, and the child actors were warned not to swallow the water if it got in their mouths during the filming of the Augustus Gloop scene. The cast laughed about it years later, remembering how they had to pretend to be excited around the river while trying not to gag. But in the moment, these were not funny bloopers. They were the challenges of creating a magical world with limited resources. Gene Wilder's approach to Willy Wonka's character also reflected this blend of control and chaos. In the rare footage of Atlas Obscura, Gene explained why he insisted on entering the factory scene with a limp and then rolling into a somersault before greeting the children. He wanted Wonka to be unpredictable, a man who could not be trusted, a man who appeared frail but was in control at every moment. This idea of control extended to the production itself, where mistakes were not always accidents, but often the result of choices made to keep the illusion alive under pressure. The production challenges contributed to the surreal tone of the film. The uneven lighting, the slightly off costumes, and the props that did not quite fit together perfectly created a dreamlike quality that made the factory feel both enchanting and unsettling. The mistakes, the visible wires, the continuity errors, and the cheap sets became part of the film's texture, adding to its strange, timeless feel. It is easy to forget that the film was made in an era without digital corrections, without the ability to fix mistakes in post-production with a few clicks. Every shot was a commitment. Every mistake meant a choice: reshoot and waste film, or move on and trust that the magic would cover the flaw. Most of the time, they moved on, letting the bloopers blend into the chaos of the factory. When the cast reflected on the film during the Collider anniversary discussion, they spoke about the challenges of working with the limited budget, the cold sets, and the long hours, but they also spoke about the magic they felt while making the film. For them, the bloopers were not failures, but part of the process of creating something larger than themselves. Imagine being in their shoes, standing on a set that smelled like spoiled milk, holding a wax teacup filled with tap water, trying to keep a straight face while singing about pure imagination. Imagine being a child actor told to pretend you were seeing wonders while being careful not to slip on a sticky floor or swallow the river water that could make you sick. This was the reality behind the fantasy. The mistakes you see on screen are the shadows of these challenges, reminders of what it took to bring the world of Willy Wonka to life. They are not just bloopers. They are the fingerprints of the people who made the film, the evidence of a production that pushed its limits to create something unforgettable. And if you rewatch the film with this in mind, you may find that these mistakes add to the charm, making the factory feel real in its imperfections. You may notice the way Gene Wilder's eyes flicker as he bites into the wax teacup, the way the chocolate river bubbles too aggressively, the way costumes shift and props wobble. And you will see the human effort beneath the fantasy. So, look for these details next time you watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. See the bloopers not as errors, but as windows into the reality of making a film that has lasted over 50 years. Let them remind you that even the most magical worlds are built by human hands, with all the flaws, challenges, and triumphs that come with it. And suppose these production mishaps were necessary to bring the fantasy to life. In that case, it makes you wonder about the narrative itself. What do the contradictions and oddities in the story mean? What deeper truths hide beneath the surface of the chocolate river, waiting for those who are willing to look a little closer? Are these plot holes or secret design? When Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory hit the screens, it felt like a miracle in Technicolor, with candy landscapes that pulled viewers into a world of dreams. But hidden beneath the songs and sweets, there were oddities that, once noticed, never quite leave your mind. And the biggest question that lingers is this: what if those plot holes we laughed at were never mistakes, but signals of a hidden narrative hiding in plain sight? Grandpa Joe's sudden mobility. You remember that moment when Grandpa Joe suddenly springs out of bed, dancing like a teenager who just heard his favorite song? For 20 years, the family said he could not work, could not even stand, while Charlie's mother washed laundry and fought to keep them fed. And then, in a blink, Grandpa Joe is up, ready for an adventure, skipping around in a moment that feels like pure joy. But it's also a moment that leaves a strange taste if you think about it. How does a man who supposedly could not walk for 2 decades suddenly dance at the prospect of visiting a chocolate factory? Here is where the blooper becomes a clue. Was Grandpa Joe lying all along, using his frailty to avoid work in a harsh world, waiting for the right moment to reveal his hidden strength? Or was there something about Willy Wonka's world, the promise of the factory itself, that woke something in Joe, like the factory was calling him? You can see the contradictions if you pause the scene, the way he moves easily, bending and turning, a man who looks like he could have been working the entire time. It feels less like a continuity error and more like a clue that Wonka's world is not what it seems. A world where innocence is an illusion and people reveal who they truly are when offered a taste of magic. Slugworth's omnipresence. And then there is Slugworth, the supposed rival chocolatier who appears out of nowhere to whisper into the children's ears. He is there at every golden ticket discovery, showing up with eerie precision that feels impossible in the real world. How did he know where to be every single time, moments after the tickets were found? It looks like a plot hole if you take the story at face value, but what if it is not? Later, we discover Slugworth is not Slugworth at all, but an employee of Wonka, testing the children's loyalty. But here is the deeper layer. What if Wonka orchestrated the entire golden ticket contest, planting the tickets, ensuring specific children would find them, and positioning Slugworth to test them immediately. It makes the factory feel less like a place of chance and more like a carefully controlled environment, a social experiment wrapped in a candy wrapper, each child selected to reveal their flaws, while Wonka watches from above. The illusion of innocence, carefully orchestrated chaos. This leads us to the idea that Willy Wonka's world is not chaotic at all, even though it looks like it. Remember the accidents in the factory? Augustus Gloop falling into the river, Violet turning into a blueberry, Veruca getting dumped down the chute, and Mike Teavee shrinking himself. These events feel random, the chaotic consequences of naughty behavior. But if you watch closely, they happen with an eerie inevitability, as if Wonka knew exactly what would happen. Take the Chocolate River, for example. The factory is designed without railings around the river, in a place filled with children who are explicitly told not to touch, surrounded by rivers of temptation they cannot resist. When Augustus falls in, it feels like an accident, but is it really? Wonka's calm reaction, the lack of panic, and the way the Oompa Loompas are ready with their song suggest it was all part of the plan. A test wrapped in candy and music. Or look at the moment with Violet and the gum that turns her into a blueberry. Wonka warns her not to take it, but he places it right there, testing her will, almost daring her to fail. It's the illusion of chaos, the illusion of choice, in a system designed to expose flaws. Mistakes that reveal the plan. People have pointed out how Grandpa Joe's slippers change from clean to dirty, how props move around between shots, or how costumes shift mid-scene. The bow in Violet's hair disappears and reappears. The everlasting gobstopper changes color between takes, or the chocolate river bubbles inconsistently. These have always been seen as budget mistakes, like the cheap resin balls painted as gobstoppers, or the chocolate river that was really a foul-smelling mix of water and powdered cream turning sour under the hot lights. But what if the mistakes are fingerprints of a deeper truth, reminding us that everything in the factory is controlled chaos, that imperfection is part of the illusion? Gene Wilder once said he wanted Wonka to be unpredictable, to keep people guessing, to maintain a sense of unease. Even the factory itself feels like it is alive, watching, shifting, adjusting the test for each child as they walk through. The wax teacup and other surprising props. That iconic teacup Gene Wilder bites? It's not candy at all. Yeah, that moment when Willy Wonka takes a bite out of that delicate yellow flower teacup while singing about a world of pure imagination feels like one of those scenes that defined childhood for so many who grew up in the 1970s and 80s. It looked like he was eating sugar petals, like the entire factory was edible if you just believed hard enough. But behind the camera, the truth was way less sweet. That teacup was made of wax. The inside wasn't filled with candy nectar. It was just plain tap water poured in right before the take to keep the illusion alive. Gene Wilder even joked in an interview years later that he tried to chew it like candy, but could only swallow the water before spitting out the wax off camera when the director yelled, "Cut." It's one of those details that reveals just how far the gap was between what audiences saw and what was actually happening on that set. The chocolate river that looked like creamy heaven. It smelled like spoiled milk under the hot studio lights, clinging to costumes and skin, making the actors gag when they stepped too close. And those grand, colorful props that made the factory look like a dream? Many were just quickly painted foam and cardboard, held together by hope and tape because the film's budget was tight, far tighter than the fantasy it was trying to sell. During the Collider 50th anniversary chat, the cast shared how the golden tickets were actually thin foil stuck over cheap cardboard. And the everlasting gobstopper that looked like the prize of childhood dreams was just a resin ball that chipped if you dropped it. Costumes were patched instead of replaced, and sets were reused because they had to keep shooting on schedule, with no room for second takes. Even continuity slipped, like when Violet's bow would vanish mid-scene or Grandpa Joe's slippers swapped from clean to dirty between cuts. These weren't just bloopers. They were the fingerprints of the people who built this world, working with what they had to create something magical, despite the limitations. If you look closely, you can see Gene Wilder's eyes flicker when he bites into that wax teacup, just for a split second before he sings again, keeping the illusion alive for millions watching at home. The Chocolate River's bubbles are a little too aggressive. The props wobble if you catch the right frame, and costumes shift as scenes jump. But these moments make the world of Willy Wonka feel alive, even in its imperfections. And maybe that's part of why it's lasted for over 50 years, because it feels real enough to let your imagination fill in the gaps, flaws, and all. It's the kind of detail that hits differently when you rewatch the film now, letting you see the hard work, the creative problem-solving, and the imperfections that made this fantasy land feel just a little more alive. What about you? Have you ever noticed this wax teacup detail before? Or has your childhood been shaken a bit now? Drop your favorite behind-the-scenes surprises from Willy Wonka in the comments so we can all geek out together.